again, sitting in limbo. I think last time we covered the early 60s, right up to about 1967. During the 60s, right in the middle of the 60s, a big change happened in Victoria. One thing, they changed the laws around hotels. Hotels before 1966 were just places where men went, and usually after work at about 5 o'clock, and stayed there till 6:15 when they all pulled out onto the street. And that's rain on the roof too, if you can hear it, which is really nice because we need rain, so that's all right. Put up with it. The bell would go around about 6 o'clock, and all hell would break loose in the pubs because the guys would order like 5 or 6 beers. They'd have them lined up, the glasses, and the barman would go along with the gun and fill them up, and they'd try and finish those beers before 6:15. Or they didn't try, they did. Then they'd fall out in the street. Had to be out of the pub onto the street. There's no women mentioned there because women never went into the bars. I don't think there's any law against it, but no woman would even think about going into the bar. If a lady wanted to have a drink, she would go into the ladies' lounge and have a shandy, something like that, but never in the bar. And even most of the servers were just a little window. Women went up to the bar to get their little drinky poo, sit down. But the laws all changed in, I think about 1966, I'm not exactly sure, 66, 67, when 10 o'clock closing came in. That changed everything. That changed entertainment. Before that, the entertainment was just dances and clubs and groups and things like that. Suddenly the pubs became the centre of entertainment. There were still laws. 10 o'clock, you could stay open to 10 o'clock in the hotel, and you could go past until 11:30. But you had to buy supper. You had to eat something. They cared about your health, to make sure. So caring about your health meant a big plate of spaghetti bolognese that smelled like, I can still remember. It was the cheese, I think, the cheap cheese. But 10 o'clock, you needed to have a ticket to get supper, and then you could stay until 11:30. So that opened up possibilities for bands, and that for me, I had a break from the industry for about 18 months, but I came right back in again in 1969 with 3 major gifts, basically. First was a phone call from Dennis Smith, one of the Go Show producers, who offered me 3 nights a week at the Dorset Gardens Hotel as a compere vocalist. They'd had a band there for many years, and they left. They got a new band who were all excellent musicians, all the best, but they weren't exactly connecting with the crowd. They even had their own singer, Dave Howard, who was a great singer, but they wanted someone like me, a little clown, sing-along clown, to go out there and introduce the acts, because it was a huge cabaret room. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was just full, just all tables and chairs and full up, and they had great special guests. The one I remember most of all was Ugly Dave Gray. Ugly Dave Gray was one of the funniest men I've ever seen on stage. And I was so nervous about introducing him. Dennis Smith was actually looking after him. I don't know if he was managing him or looking after the time, but he was there. And I was so nervous, I thought all week about how I'd introduce Ugly Dave Gray. And just as I'm about to go out into the room, this big full room, all these people have paid all their money to come and see Dave, and he turns to Dennis and said, "Dennis, did you tell Terry the intro?" And I'm halfway out to this. I go, "Oh no." So anyway, I had a specific little speech I had to make out there, basically saying that you've all come here tonight. I know you've had great expectations, and I'm sorry, I'm blah blah blah, but he got in anyway. Ha ha ha. That was the joke. But it was a funny time. I'd be out there 3 nights a week, and then but that was also when I first started playing guitar. The band, well, they didn't like me very much because I was hired by I was basically an insult to them, I suppose, because I was hired to put some sauce on their pies. But one night I even had the audacity to, I didn't play guitar very much, didn't know much, to take my cheap Yamaha Gibson copy out there and a borrowed amp. And I was a big fan of Johnny Rivers and there's 2 albums, Johnny Rivers Live at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And from that I got the idea that Johnny Rivers was just singing Beatles songs and soul songs and everything, just doing it all with a that kind of rhythm, you know, and it's really infectious. They're great albums. If you ever get a chance to hear live at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And anyway, I learned 4 or 5 songs. No, sorry, maybe 3 or 4. And I went out in front of these excellent musicians with my guitar and got up there and I started with a... Suddenly the whole dance floor just went boom. I thought, this is magic. So I discovered how good it was to be in charge of my own destiny. So if you can play guitar, whatever, it's piano, whatever. If you're just a singer, you need to be really good. Otherwise, you've got to rely on other people all the time. So that was, I started playing guitar, and then at the same time, my brother had a band at DeMarco's Hotel in Essendon, and he said, why don't you bring your guitar along one night and play a few songs? So I said, all right. So I went along, and he basically had an old-time band. Had piano player must have been at least 77. Double bass player who sang like Bing Crosby, and my brother on drums, and it was a sax player. So anyway, so I got up at DeMarco's in Essendon, and I did the same. The same thing happened. Immediate reaction, boom, on the dance floor. So I stayed there for 14 years after that. And at the same time as that, the original mixtures, Laurie Arthur, John Creech, and Rod de Klerk, got back together again. Laurie had been out of the business for a while, working with his brother, I think, in construction and things like that. John, the drummer, he was still the pop star, he was still in the mixtures, but for some reason he left just before they had the Push Bike song as a hit, or in the summertime, whichever. So John's always been a bit of a star, you know, still is. And Rod de Klerk had been in the army. He'd just come back from Vietnam. So they'd gotten back together again, and they got a gig at the Council Club Hotel in Preston. So there's the Dorset Gardens, DeMarco's, and the Council Club. Very important. The Council Club was huge, a very big room. They had the job 4 nights a week. So this is something that doesn't happen now, and probably will never happen again. But from 1969 until the year 2000, I was never out of work, 3 or 4 nights a week at least, at hotels, because that's what you did. That's what, you know, I did many other things, but every week I would have, and not just me, I mean dozens and dozens of musicians that that did that kind of circuit. You know, you just work the same gigs every week, and that's because that's the way the business was. But they called themselves Action at the Council Club, and they needed a 4th guy. They had another guy, David Pinkham, I think it was, but that didn't work out. So Laurie rang me and said, "Oh, can you come over and sing a couple of nights?" Because they worked Monday to Thursday, and Monday and Tuesday it was just a short night, so they just did it as a trio, and then I joined them Wednesday and Thursday. So, and I did that virtually as a favour for a year, and I think they'd give me $10 or something a night, something like that. But I was happy just to help out. At the end of the year, it was going so well that we went to we had to go and approach the hotel to up the money just a little bit. But at the same time, I was working Wednesday and Thursday at the council club, and Thursday, Friday and Saturday at DeMarco's. So on Thursday night I would start at DeMarco's, and that Thursday night they only went till 10 o'clock. Friday and Saturday they went till 11:30. So at 10 o'clock I'd run out the back, jump in my car, race across from Essendon to Preston, jump on stage and do a floor show with action, and then finish off the night with them. So Thursday nights it was 2 gigs. But the council club was amazing. On Wednesday and Thursday they were packed, and the bands like the Blue Echoes and that played there different nights. They played there for many years too. But we were there from about 1969 through to 72, 73, I think. Wednesday night at the council club was Talent Quest night. Because we had to do a floor show on Wednesday and Thursday, and the bands or whoever on the weekend had to do it, because of the late licence, at 10 o'clock the pubs had to serve supper, and people had to sit down to have supper. You couldn't play a dance bracket or anything like that because they weren't allowed on the dance floor. They had to sit and have supper. It was just, silly laws and everything, but we were happy not to have 10 o'clock closing, or not to have 6 o'clock closing. So it's 10 o'clock, people would have prepaid for their supper when they come in, they have a ticket and everything, and there'd be spaghetti bolognese or spaghetti bolognese. It was crook. The cheese was crook, and or some other delicacy, chicken schnitzel, or a few scrawny looking oysters, smoked oysters probably. There's a delicacy. And so I came up with one night to have a talent quest. And that got huge. We used to get about 600 people every Wednesday night for the talent quest, and major prizes like a trip to Mornington or something. I don't know. We had some sort of prize at the end of the talent quest. There'd always be a final. But one night was a disaster, almost a disaster for my career anyway. Because a girl came up to me and said, I want to go on the talent quest. And I said, "Are you sure? What do you do?" She said, "I'm a dancer." Oh, okay. Well, what, you got music? She said, "Oh no, just play some rock and roll. I'm a rock and roll dancer." Oh, okay. So what do I call you? I just say it's Mary from the Kitchen. So I've got other acts all lined up and everything, and I'm ready to go. And then I say, and the kitchen was off to the left, probably about 30 or 40 feet away from the side of the stage. And I said, "Okay, next act is Mary from the Kitchen. Here she is. Give her a big hand." And this girl runs out. She's got on a white chef's coat of some sort, no shoes. That should have been a clue. And a chef's hat. And then gets up on the stage, dances around, wiggles around like this. Next thing, she twirled, the coat opened, and she's got nothing on underneath, and she threw the coat off. That crowd was going nuts. Like, she took the hat off too. This girl's dancing around on the stage, completely naked. And I'm trying to stop the band, because I'm at the side of the stage. We had Charlie Gould playing guitar, added to the band to read the charts and back the floor show to us. And the band's just laughing and carrying on. The crowd's going nuts. They're all, because it was a stepped building. Like we were on the low part, but everyone's on their feet in the whole 600 people, all cheering. And I got dragged over the coals by the manager, Frank North, that night, and I said, "What could I do?" It was my fault. But we had the same sort of thing at DeMarco's. I should get back to tell you because at DeMarco's we created Bluestone, which was my band that, well, we still get together every now and then, but our major time was from 1969, when I started with my brother, right through to the early 80s. The band was basically created on stage at DeMarco's. I'd turn up, my brother was there playing drums. One night, I think it was a Christmas Eve, the joint was packed, and it was just John and I. God knows what song, I don't know that I knew that many songs. I knew a lot of songs, but not to play them. But somehow we did the whole night, and I remember it being a whole lot of fun, just drums and guitar. And we'd try out different people, because we slowly got rid of the old-time band. I got rid of the sax player. I just told him, because he'd stand next to me and blurt up while I was trying to sing. So it got to the end stage where I wouldn't play with them. They'd take a break, and then I'd do my bit, and then I'd come back on again. But we eventually got rid of that lot. And we tried out different people on stage, and I think the first person to join permanently was Ted Fry on bass. Ted was a great bass player, great singer, told great Polish jokes on stage. And the magic really came when one night someone said there's a pedal steel player. Now, I didn't know that there were that many pedal steel players in Melbourne. And Mike Burke came along and played pedal steel one night. No rehearsal or anything. He just got on stage and we started playing together. And that was magic, because that's the sound that I was really into at that time. I loved Mike Nesmith and the First National Band. I love bands like the Flying Burrito Brothers and any country rock bands, and the Byrds. And pedal steel was the instrument there. And Mike's a great player, still is. So we eventually got the whole band. We had my brother, Mike Burke, Ted Fry and me. And we played like that for a while. My brother had a career at TAA. He'd been there, since he was 15 years old. And that was his career. And we got offers to do other things, to start moving around, and it came to a point where it was either John's career or the band. And I've always had some regrets about that situation, but John left, and it's not a bad thing, because he ended up playing for the next 8 or 9 years at the Brickmakers Arms and the Royal Hotel with the Escorts, which is just down the road. So we had the area covered. The irony of me sort of telling my brother that we wanted to make some changes was that same thing happened to me 12 years later. So what goes around comes around. But John was replaced with Colin Millington for a short while, and then I got a phone call from John Creech, who I was still working with, at the council club, and he was having some difficulty with Laurie and Rodney. I think they'd reached the end of their honeymoon period, and John said, "Can I join your band?" And I said, "You sure can." And that was the band complete. So we had Ted, John and Mike and me, and that was the band that recorded the first album. John, we hit with a song called Wind and Rain, which John sang, and one of the highlights of that first part of the band was we got to tour Australia with Cat Stevens, which was just magical. Cat Stevens at that time was probably one of the, if not the biggest, one of the biggest acts in the world. It certainly was in my eyes anyway. So we got to tour everywhere but Perth. All the shows, they didn't take us across to Perth. But that was just wonderful to be on the stage with him. He had a giant sound shell of his own. He carried his own stage around, which he set up on the stages. It didn't, if you saw the show in Melbourne, he didn't have it here because it wouldn't fit in under the roof in Festival Hall. But there was a big white dome, much like our music bowl, but it's made out of cloth. And he had his own sound system, which is rare in those days. Like mostly the bands would come out into, and they'd use like the Beatles did, they'd use the in-house system. But Cat Stevens had monitors. That's another rare thing. He actually had a monitor set on the stage and had his own controls on the monitor. And the sound system was done by a company called Clare Brothers, and that was the start of the big sound systems around the world. That was around 1973, I think. At Cat Stevens' Bamboozle tour. The thing with doing the support is they didn't really want us on the show, but musicians' union rules meant that they would have to have a local support. Cat Stevens actually had his own support, a girl called Linda Lewis, who was just a beautiful singer. If you are aware of, if you haven't heard Linda, she had a Minnie Riperton type voice. She had that high, super high voice. She was, and just a gorgeous girl too. They all were, the whole crew, the band with Cat Stevens. But the stage was set up, so we're the support band. We could do whatever we liked as long as we didn't touch anything. So we had to set up all our stuff around his and play. It's fine. I would have done anything. The first shows were at the Hordern Pavilion in Sydney, and what the band didn't know, the rest of the guys in the band didn't know, that messages come through to me the day before we left that we didn't have the whole tour. There was another band called Glen Rowan whose management had got in underneath us and bumped us off the tour. Luckily I got friendly with Alan Davies, Cat Stevens' guitar player, virtually his partner at that stage, and he really liked the band. So I said, oh, it's great to be on the show. It's just a pity that we won't get to play in our hometown. He said, oh, what do you mean? And I told him the story. Nicely, no complaints or anything. I got a phone call from Ron Blackmore, who was the tour manager at the time, 2 o'clock in the morning, and he said, I don't know what you did, but you're back on the whole tour. I said, yes. So we did the whole show at Hordern Pavilion. Another thing that happened at Hordern Pavilion, there was an English band called Osibisa, who are all they're all black guys, all play African music. They turned up at soundcheck on Saturday afternoon. Cat Stevens was doing soundcheck, and he started singing "Another Saturday Night and I Ain't Got Nobody," because it was Saturday afternoon. And the band all joined in, and they're just doing this Sam Cooke song. And they had so much fun singing it that he actually came down, when they came to Melbourne, they went to Armstrong Studios and recorded the song here, and that became a worldwide hit for Cat Stevens. That was the first cover song that he ever did. We were recording the Bluestone album at the same time, and John Russell, who was Cat Stevens' piano player, stayed behind because John Creech and I were at the session, and he stayed behind after they'd finished and played piano on a couple of tracks on the Bluestone album, which is a lot of fun. But all your bands out there that have done support acts for people, you know that you go out and you don't get the light show. You get one single globe and one speaker or something. They don't give you the whole PA. They never give you. They never want you to sound too good because you're just the support. I've seen some things over the years. I saw Shane Howard once, I think, doing a support for somebody, and whatever they gave him to work through was just dreadful. I thought that's just not right. But we got by. In Adelaide, we played at the Thebarton Town Hall, which is near the airport, and Cat Stevens refused to go on until the last plane had left, which is 9:30. So, and that was fair enough too, because the planes went right across the hall. You have this 727 going over as he's singing, "I'm being followed by a moon shadow," So they came to us and said, look, would you guys mind doing a longer set? Would you do double? Because we got 20 minutes. Would you do double the set? Would we ever? Yeah, we'd be more than happy. And so, as gratitude from the crew, we got the deal. We got the full bit. We got the light. We got blackouts at the end of the songs, and we got the lights. So it just shows you the power of the production. Because we'd start playing the intro to a song, and people would applaud. Come to the end, they'd just be going nuts, and the lights are going up and down. We've got a beautiful PA sound, and I think that's probably the best reception I've ever had at any big show. We've done a few big shows over the years. Gary Carruthers and I have done a few big shows, but this night at Theberton Town Hall, I just remember it was magic. I think Cat Stevens heard the response upstairs, and the next night we were back to 1 globe and a half of PA. But that was all right. So we really had a lot of fun. I remember we finished up the tour in Brisbane. One thing for all the people, if you remember a great racing identity, Roy Higgins, great jockey, is probably Australia's best jockey ever. One image I'll never get out of my head was at the Travelodge in Brisbane. John Creech and I are sitting having a drink. Cat Stevens is in the bar, just a little bar, the only other two people. Cat Stevens is sitting with Roy Higgins, drinking I don't know over what, and they're both smoking cigars. And that's a picture I never would have expected. I can't imagine what they had in common, but there it was. And we finished up the next day. The only time we spoke to Cat Stevens in the whole tour was he was sitting by the pool playing mahjong, I hope that's the right pronunciation, with Jean Roussel. And Jean Roussel was a very large man with a huge afro, giant. Because I remember at that stage I had a Mazda 929 fastback. When he got in my car when I drove him back to the hotel, after the session, and he virtually filled the car up. But he was sitting there, and we went over just to say goodbye. And Cat Stevens is still there. And the only time we spoke, is Jean said, "Steve, the boys are leaving." "Oh, lovely tour, boys." And went off. But it's something I'll never forget. Still love Cat Stevens. So next time we meet, we'll get on to the next era of Bluestone, which was another change too. So things evolve, things change, but I get to more of that next time we meet. I left my happy home to see what I could find out. I left my folk and friends with the aim to clear my mind out. Well, I hit the rowdy road, many kinds I met there, many stories told me of the way to get there. Ooh. It was 2 a.m.